Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
We made it to the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We'd love to tell you it's all good news. We do have some good news, which is also a little bit crazy. We've also got some bad news for sure, and some more craziness from what's being revealed about the final months and really even year of the Biden administration in terms of how just out to lunch he was on basic functions of the job. Jim, quick follow-up here before we get going, though, on one of yesterday's stories, and that's, once again, New York City. There were reports that Trump advisors were trying to get Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race by offering them jobs. Trump finally did address this in public yesterday. He did not go that far, but he does want to narrow the field. He just won't say who should get out.
Are you urging or encouraging any candidates in the New York City mayor's race to drop out to clear the field?
No, I don't like to see a communist become mayor, I will tell you that. And I don't think you can win unless you have one-on-one, because somehow he's gotten a little bit of a lead. I have no idea how that happened, but I'd prefer not to have a communist mayor of New York City. And, you know, that's what he is based on his policy, if you look at his statements in the past. So I would like to see two people drop out and have it be one-on-one. And I think that's a race that could be won.
How about Mamdani and Cuomo? I think those would be the two that I would love to see drop out. Probably won't happen. So does this indicate to you that he's inching in that direction, or is that as far as he's going to go?
Well, Greg, first of all, I'd love to see three guys drop out and just let this automatically be Mayor Sliwa. A day after the spokesman for Eric Adams said he will never drop out of this race, the New York Times reports he's had conversations with people in the Trump administration about dropping out of the race. As we've noted earlier, Adams is running a really distant fourth, so there's not that many more votes to allocate if he were to drop out. This certainly sounds like Trump wants to set up a Cuomo versus Mamdani one-on-one battle. And if you're anybody remotely right of center in New York, yeah, maybe you want to do anything. Like, voting for Cuomo is only acceptable if you're like, I will do anything, including degrading and illegal acts, to stop Mamdani from becoming the next mayor of New York City. And like, your consolation prize for compromising all your principles that way is Mayor Andrew Cuomo. And Andrew Cuomo is really bad at hiding the fact that he wants to run for president some days. Like, so that's like, I look at this and I'm like, well, Sliwa is actually what a conservative would want as mayor of New York City. So if Mamdani's likely to win in any scenario, go with the guy who actually stands for what you want, as opposed to this human slug in Andrew Cuomo. But, you know, your mileage may vary, New Yorkers. See how, but I will be shocked and kind of disappointed if after Curtis Sliwa emphasizing to us in no uncertain terms that he had no intention of dropping out of the race, he didn't want any other job, he didn't want a gig in the Trump administration. If he drops out, I will be disappointed, and we will talk about that a lot in future episodes.
He's not going anywhere. He didn't mention Trump. Yeah, he mentioned Trump once in the interview, and that was only in the context of Eric Adams working in the Trump administration after he loses. So he knows cozying up to Trump isn't good for him, and listening to Trump in this situation isn't good. All right, well, we will get to a little bit of sanity in Washington, D.C. government, which we don't get to talk about very often, in just a second. But whether you're running a government, whether you're running an office, in today's fast-moving world, your team needs to stay connected to your customers without missed messages, communication silos, or slow phone systems. A flexible and efficient business phone system isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential to succeed. That's why you need Open Phone.
If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a plumbing emergency. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait or did you call the next one on the list? Chances are you moved on. With OpenPhone, you will never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers, because OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that streamlines and scales your customer communications.
You can see why more than 50,000 businesses trust OpenPhone to manage their business's calls and texts. OpenPhone is offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/3ML. That's OPENPHONE.com/3ML. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. You get to keep those numbers. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Jim, you don't talk about sanity in the D.C. government very often. You and I have been around long enough from Marion Barry, at least the later stages of his mayoral career. We've seen Adrian Fenty. We've now been almost through 3 terms of Muriel Bowser. I'm sure she's planning to run again, which might be one of the reasons she's doing this, but it's also seems just like a good idea. So, Trump federalized the D.C. police force, put it under federal government control, Pam Bondi officially. But it's only good for 30 days unless Congress were to extend that. It doesn't appear that Congress is going to extend that. And Muriel Bowser has been pretty careful about how she's responded to this. She didn't shout for joy that the feds were jumping in, but she also knows there's a real crime problem in her city. And so she's like, well, the president does have the authority to do this in Washington, D.C., and we're going to cooperate as best we can for as long as we can here. And so as we get close to ending this 30 days now, she issues this whole memorandum where she says there is established in the Safe and Beautiful Emergency Operations Center, I wonder who named that, to manage the district's response to the task force, the presidential declaration of emergency, and on a continuing basis. The office will coordinate centralized communications and formulate post-emergency planning, formulate post-emergency operations, and ensure coordination with federal law enforcement to the maximum extent allowable by law within the district. That is not sitting well with certain lefties on the council, including Brianne Nadeau, who says with her latest executive order, the mayor of our city has again signaled her plan to collaborate indefinitely with federal law enforcement to capitulate in advance. This in the face of the administration's egregious takeover of a city of 700,000 residents who have made clear their disdain for federal occupation. Jim, some people just don't love lower crime.
Occupation. Like, don't we usually mean that's like a foreign invading force?
Right.
These are U.S. troops. These are Americans. These are apparently American soldiers occupying American soil, which is where do they belong? Also, Greg, was it the Safe and Beautiful Emergency Operations Center?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so this is where they only handle the safe and beautiful emergencies. If it's an dangerous, ugly emergency, you take that down the hall. We don't deal with that here. It's only safe, beautiful emergencies. But a bit more seriously, since the beginning of going back to Los Angeles and Karen Bass, you saw people who are definitely not conservatives, but I don't know whether you characterize them as center left. Josh Barro, David Axelrod, clearly not a Democrat. Joe Scarborough went on this on Morning Joe a couple days ago. There are real crime problems in most major American cities. Washington, D.C. is one of them. Chicago is one of them. Los Angeles is one of them. And you roll in the National Guards, crime is going to go down. People are not going to commit violent crimes right in front of a bunch of whole National Guard troops. I think even the dumbest drug dealer, even the dumbest mugger is like, whoa, that's a tank there. Okay, I don't know if I can outrun that. That's going to be, so they don't do that. Now, as we've discussed in this podcast before, that's probably not a great long-term solution to do this. The same way with I don't mind putting 100 FBI agents on the streets. I don't mind putting 100 DEA agents walking down the streets. But I assume these guys had day jobs. I assume these guys had other duties that they were doing before this. If you want to put them on the streets in an emergency capacity, fine. But at some point, they're going to need to get back to do what their original duties were. What DC needs are more cops, more prosecutors, and to actually put people behind bars. Some of these are going to require a longer-term solution. If you are Muriel Bowser, you have a choice. You can do the J.B. Pritzker bit, and you can act like everything's fine in Chicago, and you can say, we don't need these National Guard troops and lead protests and all that kind of stuff. Or you can say, Mr. President, we thank you. We're already seeing some results. We're happy to see those results, but it's not going to be sufficient in the long run, and we'd like to see X, Y, and Z. In that scenario, Trump might at least listen to you. Right? You're not demonizing the administration. You're not pretending that there isn't a serious crime problem. You're appreciative of the improvement. You're not denying the improvement that's occurring, but you're also recognizing that this is not all that needs to be done. And I think if you're trying to get, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, right? What is your actual goal here? Now, I think if you're J.B. Pritzker, your ultimate goal is the Democratic presidential nomination. So saying thank you for sending National Guard troops in Chicago could be helpful, Mr. President. There's a real crime problem. That doesn't help you get the Democratic nomination. Saying that Trump is going to take over the world, that does help you do that. So a rare congratulations to Muriel Bowser. Still a lot we would disagree with her on, but at least on this one, she is recognizing having a National Guard is doing some good. Crime rates are down since they got deployed. And that while this may not have been her ideal solution, this may not have been what she wanted to do, she will welcome any improvement in the crime rates in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think it boils down to the question, which she answers correctly and others are not. Who do you hate more, Trump or the criminals who are killing and carjacking and robbing and assaulting? It's not a hard question, but for some Democrats, because of their political ambitions, it is a hard question.
Greg, for some Democrats, it's not a hard question. They hate Trump more. What are you talking about? Yeah,
Yes, true.
all the murderers do is kill people. Trump is threatening their budgets, and you got to you got to draw the line somewhere.
Like you said, rare, but Muriel Bowser, you got that one right, and we'll see what that cooperation looks like once the 30 days are officially up, and whatever it looks like, hopefully it means DC stays safer than it was over a month ago. All right. Well, speaking about staying safe, how about the safety of and health of your liver? Because over 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, which is a problem that often goes undetected until the very last minute and can lead to some serious health issues. So Dose is on a mission to educate all of us on why it's important to maintain your liver health. And it's also created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter.
This is Dose, D-O-S-E, not dose as in number 2, or Dos Equis, which might be one of the factors that got your liver in trouble in the first place. If you stick with Dose, you will feel the incredible benefits over time. More energy, better digestion, reduced bloating, healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog, and even better sleep. Taking just one dose shot is the equivalent of 17 shots of turmeric juice. Now, I don't know about you, Greg. I don't want to take 17 shots of turmeric. I don't want to take 17 shots of anything. So Dose is a gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan option to help your liver.
Support your health with Dose Daily. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders and not one-time purchases. Cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ml. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now, and it's the first Friday of the month, and that means we have the job numbers for the previous month. So the August numbers are out, and we got a pretty good indication they weren't going to be super strong when Trump tweeted or truthed out yesterday, "You're not going to know the real numbers for about a year." Well, here we go. There's what the numbers are, at least being reported by the government. CNBC job creation sputtered in August, adding to recent signs of labor market weakening and likely keeping the Federal Reserve on track for a widely anticipated interest rate cut later this month. Non-farm payrolls increased by just 22,000 for the month, while the unemployment rate rose to 4.3%, had been 4.1. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had been looking for payrolls to rise by about 75,000. The report also showed a marked slowdown from the July increase of 79,000, which was revised up by 6,000. Revisions, though, also showed a net loss of 13,000 in June after the prior estimate was lowered by 27,000. So, Jim, as the article suggested, the silver lining, if you squint here, is that maybe the Fed will see the economy slowing, and that will lead to interest rate cuts, which will make it easier for people to buy homes and buy cars and take out loans for other reasons and so forth. But obviously, when you wake up on the first Friday of the month, you want to see it positive, which it is, but it's nowhere near where we would like it to be.
Yeah, some Wall Street analysts who had expected 0 rate cuts until the end of the year were now projecting not 1 but 2 rate cuts between now and the end of the year. Lisa Cook, all is forgiven if she votes yes. I don't know. Probably not, but the president very much would like to see that. Different economists will give you different answers, but I think this is the sort of thing that makes you say, okay, there's now real economic trouble. By the way, I went and I checked. First of all, I think this is bad news for the new BLS director. The last one, Bureau of Labor Statistics, got fired when Trump didn't like those. Get rid of this one too. Unfortunately, the more you fire BLS directors, the more that increases the unemployment rate. That's the. No, look. There are a bunch of us who were very skeptical of the tariffs, who argued that while that might help certain U.S. manufacturers, even more U.S. manufacturers are dependent on something from overseas, and if you make what they're importing and then working on in their factories and selling to Americans and the rest of the world, if you make their input costs higher, then the final costs are higher, which means sales slow down. Sales slow down, profits slow down, you end up laying people off, or you start slowing down hiring. And it didn't happen for the first couple months. There was not an economic collapse the moment the tariffs got enacted. And so a lot of people are like, aha, see this, tariffs aren't so bad. Well, now it's starting to go month by month. The tariff revenue is going up, and that's another somewhat of a silver lining for this. But I think we're starting to see the real consequences of the tariffs kick in here. And it was supposed to be this big boon for manufacturing, and we are not seeing that in the numbers. And yes, the response rates are slower than they used to, but eventually, we have an economy that is not disastrous, but is really not taken off, and there's a lot of sign of slowdown. And as you mentioned, even job loss one of those months. So, this is not great. This is really not where you want to be. Now, maybe next couple of days the Fed comes out, cuts rates, stock market takes off, and everything's hunky dory again. I do think this is a cumulative effect of the tariffs finally being seen in the numbers, and again. You and I when the jobs report is good, we put it in the good category, whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. When it's a bad numbers, we put it in the bad category, no matter who's president. These are pretty disappointing numbers, and this is going to be bad news for Republicans. We're a year away from the midterms, but you want this economy to be humming in the year ahead of it, and I don't think that at this point it is not looking like a great forecast for that.
Yeah, and if you're a Republican in New Jersey or Virginia running for office, you only got one more of these, and I don't know how different it'll look in October. The other one will come out, just right around Election Day. Jim, one of the arguments from some folks on the right is that, yes, the numbers are down, but you have to factor in that there's been a big shift since Trump took office in people born here. Their numbers of jobs are going up, and those foreign-born are going down. Now, the BLS doesn't distinguish between whether they're here legally or illegal, but a lot of people think a big chunk of those are illegal. We know that about 1.5 million of those people have self-deported, and so that's why these numbers look like they do. What do you make of that?
Well, if that were the case, and I'm not saying it's not the case, but that would create a whole bunch of job openings that need to be filled by all of these foreign workers who have now self-deported. So where are all the job openings? Where are all the native-born Americans being hired into that? Why, I'm not completely ruling out that interpretation of the numbers, but I'm skeptical of that. Also, I believe in the last month, for the first time since it's been a couple of years, that we have more, the number of unemployed is now higher than the number of job openings. I should also point out, Greg, have you heard about the idea of the phantom job openings? That some companies have listed job openings and they never fill them, and they have no intention to fill them, and they're not doing interviews or something like that. I don't quite get the strategy behind that beyond corporate, and company inertia. But I've heard people who say, I've applied to that company 1 million times. I never get a reply. I never get a response. And that certain of these things are. So it's conceivable when people say we have 7 million unfilled jobs in this country, that not all of them are real jobs, that not all of them are ones that, the company is just itching to hire somebody. But all in all, that is you can argue, if you squint, you can look at the numbers and you can see things that maybe seem a little bit different than the first impression. But by and large, I don't think you can say, the unimpressive job creation numbers really are just a reflection of illegal immigrants self-deporting. I have a hard time believing that, that you'd be seeing this in the kinds of scale that would be affecting the numbers like this.
Well, the pressure will certainly be on from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond for the Fed to cut rates. We'll see if they do, how soon they do, how much they do. But guys, wouldn't you like to look a little younger, maybe feel a little more confident? Caldera Lab is here for you. Their high-performance skincare is designed specifically for men, simple, effective, and backed by science.
Greg, I think we've established that being a governor of the Federal Reserve Board, very hard to lose your job. You have a great deal of job security. In fact, a hot topic in the news these days. Caldera Lab has an award-winning serum packed with 27 active botanicals and 3.4 million antioxidant units per drop. Don't ask me how they counted that. To help protect your skin from environmental... 1, 2, 3, 4. It would take a while. The eye serum helps reduce the appearance of tired eyes, dark circles, and puffiness with a breakthrough peptide complex and adaptogens that support skin resilience. Greg, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm hearing about adaptogens all the time. And I thought they were one of the Transformers. You had the Autobots, you had the Decepticons, and the adaptogens who they just changed sides. They adapted all the time. But no, adaptogens support skin resilience, and they will help you look well-rested.
You certainly care what's in it, but how does it work? That's what you probably want to know most. In a consumer study, 100% of men said their skin looked smoother and healthier. Hard to beat that number. Upgrade your skincare with Caldera Lab. Easy, effective, and made for men. Skip the drugstore and try it for yourself. Visit calderalab.com/3ml and use the code 3ml for 20% off your first order. Again, that's calderalab.com/3ml with the code 3ml for 20% off. All right, Jim, for our Crazy Martini, we've got a little bit of a follow-up to the Autopen story from the days of the Biden administration. And to no one's surprise, the Autopen got used a lot, and we've got more complications as it relates to pardons. Just the News has reported on this. The New York Post has reported on this. You've reported on it in the corner, citing the New York Post. And so basically what happened is when Biden came into office in 2021, the memo went around saying, yes, we need the president's signature on anything looking like a pardon or clemency. This needs to be handled directly. Well, by 2024, things looked a lot differently. Biden was not active in this process, and he was increasingly deferring to the vice president and just kind of going along with whatever Kamala Harris said. In fact, you cite the New York Post in the corner this morning saying White House staff secretary, then at that time, Steph Feldman, wrote to West Wing lawyers that she needed evidence Biden had consented before she authorized a mechanical signature on one of the most sweeping acts of clemency in American history. Quote, I'm going to need an email from the deputy assistant to the president on the original chain confirming that he signs off on the specific documents when they are ready. 6 minutes later, Deputy White House Counsel Taisha Dixon, one of the email recipients, forwarded the message to Michael Posada, chief of staff to the White House counsel's office. Quote, Michael, thoughts on how to handle this? Dixon asked. He doesn't review the warrants. Jim, there's a lot more to the story than this, but basically, just Biden just drifted further and further away from actually doing the job.
Well, and again, let's keep in mind that, several times over the course of his current presidency, President Trump has made reference to, Biden being asleep at the switch, not being aware of what he was doing, using the Autopen, et cetera. And back in June, President Biden issued a written statement. Well, somebody issued a statement.
Right.
They may have used the Autopen on this written statement. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false. Well, it certainly looks like we're getting into a gray area. You summarized the Post reporting on this, but there's a detail in there that I had not seen, which is, this becomes a story. New York Times writes a real article, and for one of the few times, in addition to the written statement is put out there, shockingly does not dispel people's concerns and doubts about this. So Joe Biden actually got on the phone with the New York Times reporters. And one of the things he said during that New York Times interview, it was published in July, was the Autopen was used because there were a lot of documents. Now, I went and I checked on the website. They did not have to do a separate document for each commutation. There was only, in the entirety of his presidency, I'm going to say like maybe 24. There's in other words, it's not, he granted clemency to 2,490 individuals. He did not have to sign each one separately. But Biden asked as if he did, or as if he did require to, which I think is just further evidence of how detached he was from this process and how it was actually working. Now, by the way, which also when he says, he doesn't review the warrants, people are used to hearing warrants in the context of arrest warrants. The warrant means the official document declaring the pardon or clemency. So in other words, Biden was not going to review the documents giving clemency to all these people, even though his signature was going to be on it. It was an official act of the presidency. Again, I don't quite see how you can square that with Biden insisting I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, or proclamations, and his suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false when we, based on everything everyone has said and reported and testified to the House so far, is that Biden described the criteria verbally. Like, it's not like even if he had written down, these are what I want, it'd at least be a little more clear, okay, this person qualifies for this person doesn't. He said so verbally. White House lawyers then went to the people requesting pardon list, went through, sorted it themselves, said, okay, boss, we got the list. And Biden said, great, run it through the Autopen. That does not sound like a careful, this is a matter of the president basically saying, okay, I trust my staff. Now, is that going to be enough to get any federal court to conclude these commutations are no longer valid? I don't know. Probably not, but I kind of want to see somebody, test this. I kind of want to see some part of the judicial branch weigh in to say, does this count if the president was effectively outsourcing all the decision-making to his staff and literally did not even give it the most cursory review of looking over the documents before he signed it. Again, there are some people who tell you it's a slam dunk case, saying, no, that's not a legitimate clemency. There are other people who'd say there's nothing in the Constitution or law that says the president has to go over any of this with any degree of detail. So that the president's pardon power is pretty darn broad on this. So I look forward to further adjudication of this. I think the president is on Biden's on thin ice. But again, that's what the courts are for.
Curious that he really did sign Hunter's pardon, though.
Yeah, well, that one. Well, he cared about that one. I'm saying that that's a snarky joke, but that honestly also is the case, and that Biden cared very much about the outcome in that one. In all of these other ones, the Cash for Kids judge and the Black Widow who killed 3 husbands. Who, by the way, these are all nonviolent offenders, Greg. Wink, wink, nonviolent. Because they got her on insurance fraud. They didn't get her on the murder charge. That Biden just, in the end, I think at that point, besides being exhausted and out of it, I think he was obviously very bitter about having the Democratic nomination wrested away from him by Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats. And I think he just had a, YOLO middle finger attitude towards everybody else and didn't care what the rest of the world did. So he was fine. I'm going to let out Leonard Peltier. Even though he killed 2 FBI guys, I'm going to let everybody, and he just went and did that. And now he gets out of office, and all of a sudden, now you have the consequence. Now you have the reputational cost of popping up pardons and commutations like a Pez dispenser. And that, now all of a sudden, I totally knew what I was doing the whole time. When in fact he clearly did not. And
of all the people involved in this, whose memory from a year ago or 9 months ago are you going to trust? Even though Biden, is vouching for himself here. Yeah. Do you honestly believe he remembers the details from late last year?
I don't think Biden remembers the details. I don't think Biden remembers the details from breakfast.
That's probably right. A very dark chapter in what was happening behind the scenes at the White House during those 4 years. Jim, time for the weekend. Good luck to your Jets. Good luck to my Bears, and we'll reconvene on Monday. See you then.
Greg, it's a beautiful day. Everybody is 0-0 except the Cowboys. Makes you bad enough to spit. See you, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your kind reviews and your 5-star ratings. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a great weekend. Join us again Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.